The crew of the Endeavour, a group of seasoned astronauts, was on a deep space exploration mission, charting distant star systems. They were searching for planets that could potentially support life. Their ship had traveled light years beyond known space when they encountered something unusual, a planet that didn't appear on any map, orbiting a dying star in the farthest reaches of the galaxy. This planet, named Charis 7, had an atmosphere remarkably similar to Earth's, yet it was completely devoid of the typical signs of life. No radio signals, no heat signatures, no movement. A mystery. But Charis 7 held more secrets than the crew could ever imagine. The planet was stuck in time, repeating the same day endlessly, and as the astronauts descended to the surface, they would soon find themselves trapped in an inescapable cycle, reliving the same moments over and over. The crew approached Charis 7 cautiously. From orbit, the planet looked serene. Oceans of deep blue, sprawling continents of green and gold, and strange cloud patterns that shifted hypnotically. Everything about it felt oddly familiar, yet unsettling. After several scans, the captain ordered the ship to descend for a closer look. As the Endeavour touched down on a grassy plain near a sprawling ruin, the crew suited up and disembarked. The air was breathable, the temperature mild. It seemed like the perfect candidate for further study. The ruins before them were ancient, made of stone structures worn down by time. Symbols and inscriptions covered the walls, but none that they recognized. It was clear this civilization had once been highly advanced. However, there were no signs of inhabitants, no corpses, no debris. It was as if the planet's entire population had vanished without a trace. The astronauts spread out, scanning the area, looking for any clues. That's when the first oddity occurred. One of the astronauts reported seeing a figure, a fleeting shadow darting between the ruins. They tried to follow, but every time they neared, the figure disappeared, almost as though it was leading them deeper into the city. The team's communication systems began to glitch, with static and faint whispers creeping through the audio channels. "Do you hear that?" one of them asked. "It sounds like voices, but distorted." Suddenly, everything went black. When the astronauts regained consciousness, they found themselves back aboard the Endeavour, preparing to land on Charis 7. Confusion swept through the crew. They had already landed, had already explored part of the ruins, but now everything was happening again, as if none of it had occurred. "This doesn't make any sense," one astronaut said, reviewing the ship's logs. According to the data, they had just entered the planet's atmosphere for the first time, but each of them remembered landing, exploring the ruins, seeing the shadowy figure. Despite their misgivings, they continued with the mission, assuming the earlier events had been some strange hallucination or glitch in their systems. They landed in the same spot, saw the same ruins, and felt the same eerie sense of déjà vu. But this time, they stayed closer together, determined not to repeat their previous steps. As they ventured into the ruins, they began to experience flashes of memory, fragments of events that hadn't happened yet but felt disturbingly familiar. The figure in the ruins appeared again, and just like before, their surroundings began to distort. The sun flickered unnaturally in the sky, and the whispers returned louder this time, and once again, everything went black. The third time they awoke, back on the Endeavour, the truth began to sink in. They were trapped in a loop, reliving the same sequence of events, starting from their approach to Charis 7. Each loop was identical, with only their memories of the previous loops intact. The ruins, the shadowy figure, the sudden blackout, it all played out the same way, time and time again. The captain gathered the crew for a meeting. "We're stuck in some kind of temporal anomaly," the captain said. "The planet, it's resetting everything. Each time we land, it's like the past never happened, but we remember it. We need to find out why." "But how do we break the loop?" asked one of the astronauts. "We've already tried different approaches, but it's the same result every time. We need to find the source," another suggested. "The ruins, the figure, it has to be connected to whatever's causing this." They agreed to focus on the ruins, suspecting that the ancient civilization that once thrived on Charis 7 had discovered something dangerous, something that trapped the entire planet in a perpetual loop. The third time they awoke, back on the Endeavour, the truth began to sink in. They were trapped in a loop, reliving the same sequence of events, starting from their approach to Charis 7. Each loop was identical, with only their memories of the previous loops intact. The ruins, the shadowy figure, the sudden blackout, it all played out the same way, time and time again. In the next loop, the astronauts landed with renewed determination. They quickly made their way to the ruins, this time focusing on the deeper sections of the ancient city. As they ventured into the heart of the ruins, the atmosphere around them began to shift. The air grew heavier, and time itself seemed to move more slowly. The figure appeared again, but this time it lingered longer, standing at the entrance of a massive stone structure. It was a tall, hooded being, its form flickering as though it was out of sync with time. The astronauts cautiously followed it inside the structure, and there in the center of a vast hall, they found it, the source of the loop. A massive glowing sphere hovered in the air, pulsing with energy. The sphere seemed alive, its surface rippling as if it was made of liquid light. Strange symbols and glyphs floated around it, continuously rearranging themselves. "This must be it," the captain said, staring at the sphere. "This is what's keeping the planet in a loop." The figure stood silently beside the sphere, watching them, as though waiting for something. "We need to stop it," one astronaut said. "Destroy it." The captain hesitated. "We don't know what could happen if we interfere. This could be holding the planet together. But if we don't, we'll be stuck here forever." The team approached the sphere cautiously, trying to decipher the glyphs. It became clear that the ancient civilization had built this device, intending it as a safeguard, an eternal preservation of their existence. But something had gone wrong, trapping not only the planet, but any visitors as well, forcing them to relive the same moments for eternity. After what felt like hours, the astronauts formulated a plan. They couldn't destroy the sphere without risking the collapse of the planet, but they could try to shut it down temporarily, long enough to escape the loop. Using their advanced equipment, they interfaced with the ancient technology, slowly unraveling the complex web of energy that powered the sphere. The process was delicate. Any mistake could reset the loop or worse, trap them permanently in time. As they worked, the figure seemed to grow more restless. It began to flicker faster, moving in and out of existence, as if it was tethered to the sphere itself. The whispers in the air intensified, but the astronauts pressed on, determined to escape. Finally, after hours of careful work, the sphere began to dim. The symbols around it faded, and the pulsing light slowed. The ground beneath them trembled, and for a moment they feared the planet would tear itself apart. But then everything went still. The loop was broken. The astronauts quickly retreated to the Endeavour, taking off before anything else could go wrong. As they ascended, they watched Karis 7 shrink below them, the ruins now distant specks on the surface. Back aboard the ship, they checked the logs, and for the first time there was continuity. The loop was gone, but there were lingering questions. What had become of the figure, and was the sphere truly disabled, or had they only delayed the inevitable? As they left Karis 7 behind, the captain ordered the ship to chart a course far away from the planet. They had escaped the loop, but the memory of what they had experienced, of the time they had lost, would stay with them forever. And somewhere in the far reaches of space, Karis 7 continued to exist, its secrets buried beneath the ruins, waiting for the next travelers to stumble upon its timeless trap. As the Endeavour traveled through space, the crew reflected on their journey. They had come looking for answers, but instead, they had found a mystery that defied explanation. The loop had trapped them for what felt like an eternity, and though they had escaped, the memory of their repeated lives weighed heavily on them. The captain stared out the window, watching the stars drift by. The universe was vast, full of wonders and dangers they could barely comprehend. Karis 7 had been a reminder of how little they truly understood about the cosmos and the forces that shaped it. Somewhere out there, other planets waited, with their own mysteries, their own dangers. But for now, the crew of the Endeavour was content to leave Karis 7 behind, hoping never to encounter another planet like it again. Yet, in the back of their minds, they knew the universe was full of loops, cycles that repeated endlessly, stories that never truly ended. And perhaps, just perhaps, they had merely stepped out of one loop and into another.